Good morning, Wabash. Speaking today at Pioneer Chapel will be K Donald Shelbourne, MD, with his talk titled, How Wabash Changed My Life. Dr. Shelbourne has dedicated his career to the treatment of knee problems for over 40 years. He pioneered the contralateral ACL reconstruction technique for torn ACLs and developed the accelerated ACL reconstruction rehabilitation protocol utilized around the world. Dr. Shelbourne's specialties include orthopedic and arthroscopic knee surgery, knee ligament reconstruction, patella realignment, and rehabilitation. Dr. Shelbourne began his orthopedic practice in 1982 and established the Shelbourne Knee Center in 2004, which includes the clinic, surgery, physical therapy, and research department. Among other knee diagnoses, his research is focused on advancing the surgical treatment and rehabilitation of ACL injuries. In total, Dr. Shelbourne has performed more than 6,000 ACL reconstructions. The progress and results of surgical patients are closely monitored through this research, which Dr. Shelbourne has shared through the publication of over 150 journal articles and 40 book chapters. He has also given presentations and speeches across the globe to share his knowledge with orthopedic surgeons, physical therapists, and athletic trainers. Through this ongoing research, Dr. Shelbourne is able to provide up-to-date treatment and knee rehabilitation methods for patients with all types of knee problems. Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Shelbourne.
First, I'd like to acknowledge my son, Brian, 12 graduate, and my nurse, Jean, and then my old professors, Dr. Z, Coach Petty, Coach Anderson back there, Coach Johnson, Coach Brummett, kind of nice to be back. When Brian asked me the title of my talk, I said, how Wabash College changed my life, and he goes, why? I'll explain. I grew up in Gary, Indiana. I don't know if you guys know anything about Gary, Indiana. It's not the best known city now, but back when I grew up, it was a really, really nice place to grow up. Gary, Indiana was founded in 1906 when U.S. Steel bought all the land on the southern tip of Lake Michigan and put their world headquarters in Gary, Indiana. Gary didn't exist until 1906, and it was a planned city. So immigrants from all over Eastern Europe, United Kingdom, moved to Gary, Indiana to work in the mills, and the mills were booming like crazy. And so everybody in Gary had a job. Everybody in Gary had a good job. Nobody in Gary had a reason to go to college, because why would you go to college when you can make more money working in the steel mills? So the only people that I knew that went to college were people that wanted to be teachers or nurses, and no right-minded guy in Gary would go to college just to be a nurse. The only reason you go to college is if you want to teach, is you want to be a coach. Well, unfortunately, my dad couldn't hear in one ear, so he was unable to work in the mills, so he was a grade school custodian, and didn't even cross our mind to go to college unless you're an athlete. My older brother, Dave, a year ahead of me, was a really good high school athlete. We went to Lou Wallace Dave's senior year. We were 10-0. He was ranked #1 in the state in being a quarterback. He got recruited by a lot of places, but in his mind, particularly Wabash College was where he got recruited the heaviest, and he really loved Wabash College. I didn't know why, because I didn't even look at colleges up until that point. I'm a junior in high school. So Dave, in the final part of his senior year, gets recruited by Northwestern University to go to Northwestern, a full ride, which for us was a great opportunity, and it's Division I, Big Ten. And so he's all excited about going to Northwestern, but now he has to turn Wabash down. He was afraid to do that, so he calls on the phone and apologetically says, well, I got a good job or offer at Northwestern. I'm going to Northwestern. I'm going to go there. I can't come to Wabash, but I have a younger brother, Don. I'll make him come. That was my recruiting pitch. He hangs up the phone and said, you're going to Wabash. I said, where in the heck is that? Well, it's Crawfordsville, Indiana, blah, blah, blah. And then he calls back and goes, oh yeah, by the way, my brother plays football and wrestles. And they said, okay, he can. And so that was my whole recruiting. The coaching staff had no idea who I was. I didn't know where Wabash was. So now I'm going to Wabash because my brother told me to. And so I figured out I had to apply, first thing. Then they have a thing called Honor Scholarships Weekend. And so I had to come down and take all these tests, and luckily I did very well on the tests, and that qualified me for a very high academic scholarship here. And at the time, there was no way in heck I'm going to get a look sports-wise. My junior year in high school, when I was committing to come here, I was 1-14 in wrestling. I was as a heavyweight, and the one was a forfeit. And my junior year in high school, I was still playing JV football because I hadn't hit my growth spurt yet. So here I am committed to Wabash. I come down and I get a scholarship not based on anything athletic, but based on my honor scholarship weekend. So I got a thing called a Pete Vaughn Scholarship, which was a full academic scholarship plus room and board. And luckily, just like my brother getting a full scholarship at Northwestern, it got me into Wabash without my parents having to pay anything. And then I came here and all of a sudden something called puberty happened, and all of a sudden I started growing hair on my body and growing taller, and it's like, wow, this is pretty neat. So I show up at Wabash and I'm 6'4", 250, and back in the day, I was the biggest kid in the school. When I committed to Wabash, I was about 5'10", 240, hadn't hit puberty yet. I show up at Wabash and I'm the biggest kid on the football team and I'm the biggest kid in the school. And so all of a sudden I'm playing football down here, and I was stunk in high school, and I ended up starting both ways in football. That was good, but the trouble is academically, if you guys know, when you take the honor scholarship exams, when you test out of certain classes, I tested out of the first year of German, first year of math, first year of chemistry, first year of physics. My freshman year, I'm taking Chem 2, second year chemistry, second year physics, second year math, second year German, and you got no credit for testing out of anything. So here I am on the football team, I'm having all these classes, and part of my scholarship, I had to maintain a B average. And my first semester, I'm working my butt off because I'd never had academics this hard in my life. So I'm trying to do what I'm told to do, get up in the morning, go to class, go to the library, have lunch, go to lab, go to the library, go to football practice, have dinner, go to the library, go to bed. So I'm doing that. Unfortunately, we had a 9-point grading system back then. If you guys never heard of that, 9's an A, 8A minus, 7B plus, 6B, 5B minus. I got a C plus in my English composition class, scared the heck out of me because it made my grade point 6.7. I'm close to losing my scholarship. So I figured I need to buckle down a little bit more. I'm doing fine. Fraternity life made me study hard. So my freshman year in wrestling, I show up, they had no idea I even wrestled in high school because I wasn't that good. And I show up, and again, I had hit puberty, and I grew quite a bit. So in the Little State tournament, it was the first wrestling tournament I was in. I took third in the tournament. But unfortunately, first in the tournament was our heavyweight, a guy named Dave Houston, that was a stud. He killed me in the semifinals. Our 91-pounder was a stud. Our 77-pounder was a stud. I'm getting the snot beat out of me all year in wrestling, getting kind of discouraged. And Coach Serves at the time said, Don, stick it out. I've never had anybody wrestle all 4 years at Wabash that graduated with a losing record. Okay, Coach, I'll stick it out. Not realizing that if you're a losing wrestler at Wabash and you're a senior, you don't stick it out. Anyway, so I'm working my butt off the first couple of years because I'm scared to death of the academics and everything else. And I get to be my junior year, and I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And at that point, my brother was going to be a football coach when he graduated from Northwestern. So I figured, well, heck, maybe I'll be a wrestling coach. So I was going to be a wrestling coach and maybe a high school teacher. So I meet with my advisor, and he said, oh, you're probably smarter than that. A little story before that, Dr. Zimmerman up there changed my life also. My junior year at Wabash, I turned in a little bit lackadaisical. In my first 2 years, I was kind of a chemistry stud in a way, but then all of a sudden I turned into a bum. And Dr. Z called me in one day and said, Shelbourne, he goes, you know, you really have a lot of potential. And I said, well, thanks, Dr. Z. He goes, you know, there comes a time in life where having potential doesn't matter anymore. What? And he goes, and you're getting there. So decided to change my tactic a little bit, so I started going to my counselor, Dr. Hainish, and he goes, well, what should I do with myself? And he goes, well, you're really good in chemistry. Why don't you try to find a job in chemistry? Okay, so he sets me up with the Eli Lilly, Kodak, and Abbott Labs, and I'm interviewing at Abbott Labs, and that's the one time I really thought a liberal arts education wasn't good, because I'm interviewing, and they said, I'm a liberal arts major and a major in chemistry, and they said, so? And I said, well, I'm looking for a job. And he said, well, we're not going to hire anybody with that kind of background. I said, well, how about if I get a master's degree? And he said, nope. I said, how about a PhD? And he said, you're a dime a dozen. And I said, I'm a junior in college. What the heck do I do? And they said, well, if you want to get a job here, go to medical school, get an MD, PhD, and we'll hire you. I hadn't heard about that. I never even thought about that. So I come back, and Dr. Haney says, what are you going to do? And I said, well, they said I should go to medical school. And he goes, go ahead. I said, well, how do you do that? He goes, well, you take the MCATs and you apply to medical school. I took Bio 1-2 my junior year, and it turns out that's all you need to get into medical school is 1 year of biology. I take my MCATs, I apply to medical school. A week later, I get a letter, congratulations, you've been accepted to the class of 1976 for IU Medical School. I'm going, okay, I guess that's an option. So at that point, I called my dad, and I said, Dad, I got accepted to medical school. And he goes, how? And I said, I just applied and I got in. He goes, we don't know anybody. He goes, you're not a doctor's kid. I said, yeah, I know, Dad. I just told to apply, and I did, and I got in. He goes, well, who wrote a letter of recommendation for you? You have to have doctors refer you, don't you? And I said, I don't think so, Dad. So I'm going to medical school, and then I call my wife, my girlfriend at the time, and we were dating for 5 years at the time. I go, Carol, I think I might go to medical school next year. And she goes, how much longer is that? I said, I think medical school is 4 years. Okay. She goes, what are we going to do? And I said, well, we can still date. She said, I don't think so. So the summer after I graduated, I'm going to medical school. I got married. Turns out I have no idea what I wanted to do when I got to medical school. And unbeknownst to me, wrestling and Wabash athletics led my career because I make it to the NCAA wrestling tournament last 2 years here, and it was just me and Coach Serby's the only ones that went to the tournament. So my senior year, we're in Oswego, New York. We drive out to Oswego, New York. I make it to the third round of the tournament, and this really quick heavyweight from New Jersey took me down and tore my ACL. So here I am, my senior year at Wabash, my last wrestling match in my career. I'm looking like a fish out of water, flopping on my back, getting pinned, crawled off the mat. Came back, didn't know what to do. I called Lafayette and found out who's Purdue's team doctor. He must be a good guy, and if he's looking at Purdue's athletes' knees, he must be pretty good. So I went up and saw him and had to have surgery, and it was miserable. At that time, they said, you're going to medical school, what do you want to do with your life? I said, I'd like to learn how to fix ACL tears. This sucks. So I went to medical school, and they said, well, in that case, you want to go into orthopedics. So I figured, okay, I'll go into orthopedics. So I went into orthopedics, 4 years of medical school, 5 years of orthopedics, and in 5 years of orthopedics, I saw 2 ACL tears. So that's not very good. While I was in training, there was a guy named Dr. Tom Brady, also from Gary, ran a sports clinic in the basement of Methodist Hospital. What he did, every morning at 7 o'clock, if you had an athlete in a high school in central Indiana that got injured, you sent him into the basement of Methodist Hospital, 7 o'clock in the morning, and Dr. Brady would go by and see these kids for free, just because he knew if he had an injured athlete during the season, the only reason a lot of kids would be able to go to college is because of an athletic scholarship. So Dr. Brady saw these kids for free, and at the time I kept thinking, that's a really neat idea, having a walk-in sports clinic like this. He offered to turn over his clinic to me when he was retiring. He was 68 years old, which at that time I thought was ancient. I know better now. So anyway, I'm getting ready to take over his practice, and he goes to a meeting and comes back and said, hey, there's some guy named Bill Clancy of Madison, Wisconsin. I heard him talk. He really has the answer to ACL tears. He was the first guy in the country to doing patellar tendon graft for ACL surgery, and at that time I had no idea what to do with ACL tears. And so Dr. Brady said, you need to go spend some time with Dr. Clancy. So it turns out here I am married, 2 kids, have a job. Carol, I think we're going to Madison, Wisconsin for a year. She goes, why? Well, because I don't know how to fix ACL tears, and that's what I want to do for a living. So I go to Madison, Wisconsin, grudgingly, come back, start my practice in 1982. And at that time, sports medicine was not even a specialty. Taking care of athletes was not even a specialty, but I was the only guy trained, and I went taking care of ACL tears, so all of a sudden I'm getting deluged with kids with ACL tears, and I didn't realize my surgery was not 100% successful. When I was a kid, when you went to the doctor, you said, what did the doctor tell you to do? I thought doctors were geniuses. How can you be a doctor without being a genius? Well, here I am one, and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And so I'm trying to fix ACL tears, and I realize I have a long, long way to go, and these people from all over the state are coming and trusting me. So I started collecting data, trying to figure, okay, what do you do, what do you do, what do you do? It's just like, Jack, if you're wrestling somebody and your coach says, I know exactly what this guy's gonna do. He's gonna do this, he's gonna do that, it makes it easier to beat him. Okay, so with that kind of a mindset, I figure, okay, I know what ACL tears look like. I know how to fix ACL tears. I need to figure out a way to make it better, make it better, make it better, make it better. So I just focused on taking care of ACL tears. While I was doing my fellowship up in Wisconsin, ironically, Purdue University came to play University of Wisconsin. the team doctor and the trainers from Purdue were talking to me. He said, "What are you doing next year?" I said, "Well, I'm coming back to Indianapolis." And they said, "You are?" I said, we really need a doctor that knows how to take care of athletic knee injuries." Well, ironically, the guy that took care of my athletic knee injury when I was at Wabash was Purdue's doctor, that now they're telling me is no good at taking care of athletic knee injuries. So now they're going to have me take care of Purdue's athletes, which was a great opportunity. I'm 31 years old. I'm just starting practice, and I'm Purdue's team doctor. At that time, sports medicine was turning into a specialty, so I went and got all the guys in town that were interested in doing sports and got together, and we formed what's called the Methodist Sports Medicine Center in 1983. The Colts moved to town in 1984, and my hospital says, "You really need to try to take care of the Colts. If we can get them coming to Methodist Hospital, that'll be a real coup." I'm already taking care of a high school on Friday and Purdue on Saturday, and I'm not sure what to do. And I get a phone call one day, and it's from the Colts trainers saying, "Hey, we're in Indianapolis. We need a team doctor. Are you interested?" I'm 33 years old. How can I turn that down? So I called a friend of mine in Cleveland. I said, "How many guys in the NFL take care of a Division I team on Saturday and a high school on Friday?" And he said, "Nobody's crazy enough to do that." Well, that's what I'm tempted to do. I said, "Okay, I'll do it for a year, and I'll see which one I like better, and then I'll quit." So I called the Colts, and I said, "Okay, I'm in charge." Well, it turns out that high school football is pretty easy. You stand there recreationally, you watch them play football, maybe one guy gets hurt. College football is a little bit different. They're a little bigger, stronger, faster, and at the end of the day, maybe 2 or 3 guys get hurt. Unbeknownst to me, pro football is head and shoulders way above college football, even Purdue. So the Colts games, I was having about 10 to 12 injuries a game, every single game. Well, the problem is I'm the team doctor, and they said, "You can take care of the medical team for the Colts." So I have nothing restricting me. So I said, "Okay, if I'm going to be at the game and somebody gets hurt, what do I have to do? I have to have everything set up somehow." I said, "Well, I want to have me be there. I want to have a dentist be there. I want to have an ear, nose, and throat doctor be there. I want an ophthalmologist there. I want a radiologist there. I want an x-ray machine in the locker room. I want to have an emergency room doctor and an x-ray tech on each sidelines. I want to have," so I have all these things that I'm going to do. And they said, "Okay, fine, that's fine." So we had the best staffed medical team in the NFL at that time because nobody was as crazy as I was to have a dentist, an ophthalmologist, a cardiologist in the stands at the games just in case. So here I am, I'm with the Colts. It's kind of interesting. My first interview, Frank Cush was the coach back then, and I went in to talk to Coach Cush, and Coach Cush says, "Son," says, "you play football?" And I said, "Yes, I did, Coach." He goes, "You know that everybody out there on the field at some time has something wrong with them that they could not play if they wanted to, but they have to play with pain. You understand that, don't you?" "Yeah, I kind of do, Coach. I do." So the trouble is in the college level and the pro level, it's a little bit different because at the college level, you're playing kind of for fun. At the pro level, you're playing as a job. And so one of the first things that happened to me, the first Colts game we had at Denver, preseason game, the first half, Coach Cush is not happy with the offensive lineman blocking properly. So he goes in the locker room and says, "You guys are goddamn blah, blah, you're going to start the third quarter." And all of a sudden, Ray Donaldson, our center, says, "My thumb hurts, I can't play." Chris Hinton says, "Well, in that case, my ankle hurts, I can't play." Somebody else says, "My shoulder hurts, I can't play." So I go to Coach Cush and I said, "Coach, none of the offensive linemen can play." And he goes, "Why?" Because they're all hurt. He goes, "Well, then, goddamn it, make them play." I said, "Coach, that's not my job. Your job is to make them play hurt. My job is to let them not play if they are hurt." And I didn't know that distinction is that if you're playing and you have an injury but you can function, that's fine. If you come out and say, "I can't function," then you can't play. So it was interesting. The difference between Purdue and the Colts was so amazing because the Colts is a job and Purdue is fun scholarship. If you're playing for Purdue and you get hurt, you just rehabilitate till you're better. If you're playing for the Colts and you get hurt, you're immediate liability. If you get hurt and you're not going to play and you were on the bubble anyhow, the Colts want to get rid of you as soon as they can because you're on the salary. If you're a good guy and you get hurt, then you really want to get back quicker. Well, there's a thing called an NFL Combine. Have you guys heard of the Combine? Okay, my first 2 years with the Colts, I'm naive as heck, go to New Orleans and we go to Phoenix. 300 college kids come in to see us, and Colts are going to draft 8. So I have to examine all 300 kids, and I have to decide, do they have anything that can potentially keep them from playing pro football? So somebody comes in and say, okay, Jack, did you ever hurt your shoulder, ankle? No, 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 no. We have no medical records. We have no x-rays. We have nothing. And I'm sitting there saying, how in the heck are we going to be able to evaluate 300 guys with no information? So I complained enough after 2 years, and they said, okay, Shelbourne, you think you know how to run this thing, then you do it. So in 1987, the combine moved to Indianapolis. Our hospital was big enough. What we did is we were able to get everybody in the day before we were examining them. We had x-rays, MRI scans, strength tests, CAT scans. We had tests like crazy on everybody, because what happens is that if somebody has a pre-existing condition that they can play with, that's fine, but if they have a pre-existing condition, somebody has a bad back, and the Colts draft them, and they're playing, and they get the idea that they're gonna get cut, all of a sudden their back starts to hurt really bad. And when they get an injury while they're playing for the Colts, you can't cut somebody when they're hurt. So it's a big problem trying to figure out, okay, who can play with what injury, who cannot play with an injury. So I had to rank people based on their ability to, quote, quit if something happened. So the NFL Combine did so well the first year, they said, okay, well, if you want to do it again, we'll let you do it next year, 1988, 1989. Our hospital did such a good job, it's been at Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis since 1987. The interesting thing is if you look at the NFL and colleges and high school right now, when I was younger, if you were the team doctor for an NFL team, that was kind of like that put you up on a pedestal. And I really thought, boy, being a team doctor for an NFL team, that would be the epitome of my profession. So I'm taking care of Purdue. The Colts come to town, I'm taking care of the Colts. And at the time, the Colts called me because the training staff looked at Indianapolis and tried to decide who was the best guy in Indianapolis to come see. So it turns out that the Colts thought I was the best guy in Indianapolis, so they asked me to be the team doctor, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I'm 33 years old, what do I do? I said, well, I'll do it for a year and see which one I like better. I did it for a year and nobody said a word. I said, well, maybe I'll do it for 2 years and see which one I like better. So I do it for 2 years. Turns out that 15 years later, I'm still doing a high school on Friday, Purdue on Saturday, and the Colts on Sunday. Made for interesting weekends, especially when Purdue was out of town and the Colts were out of town. Remember one night we had a game in Minnesota, evening game on Saturday. We're playing in Buffalo the next day for the Colts. I had a lot of weekends, it was kind of tough. But I didn't mind because it's still better than working in the steel mills. Being on the sidelines at a football game is better than working in the open hearth in Gary. So I didn't mind that at all. Bill Polian comes to town in 1998. Bill Polian says, hey, where's Shelbourne on Saturdays? And he goes, well, he takes care of Purdue on Saturday. He goes, but he's our doctor. And he said, yeah, I know, but Colts go to town for the Sunday game on Saturday. I'm sitting there thinking, why should I sit in the hotel room Saturday night when I can take care of Purdue on Saturday? So I did both for 15 years. And Bill Polian supposedly told the trainers, you tell Shelbourne he can't take care of both Purdue and the Colts anymore. So he calls me and said, you can't take care of Purdue and the Colts anymore. I said, well, my oldest son, John, is going to Purdue to play football next year. I'm not quitting Purdue. Okay, I'll tell Bill that. Next thing you know, 15 years of being the Colts team doctor, I am now not the Colts team doctor. I got no official announcement, no thanks for a good 15 years, no plaque, no anything. It's a business. It's an interesting business. The other thing that's happened in 1998, when I quit the Colts, the year or two before that, what was happening is that players, when they got injured, all wanted to get second opinions. Because they know that the team doctor may or may not be the best guy, so all these guys that have knee injuries for the Colts are going to other people around the country for second opinions. And all these guys call me and say, hey, Don, I'm really sorry about this, but the player doesn't trust you because you're the team doctor. I said, what's wrong with that? Well, the team doctors now are not the best guys anymore. It turns out that in the NFL, unbeknownst to me and other sports, the team doctor is the hospital that pays the team the most money for the rights to take care of the team. So every team now that has a medical staff, the medical staff is there because their hospital outbid the other hospitals in town, and it's not necessarily anymore who's the best doctor, it's who pays the most money. And from a business perspective, it makes sense. And when I talked to the guys around the league, they said, we can't differentiate doctors. They're all qualified. They're all board certified. So it just makes sense to put it up for bid. And then after the player gets injured, he can go to whoever he wants and be taken care of. We're not dictating who takes care of anybody. So it turns out that that's what happened in the professional sports, is that the team doctors were the ones that were paying the most money to be there. And that was kind of the thing I didn't want to be part of anymore, because being there just for my own ego, I was long past that, unfortunately. It turns out that in high schools, one of the things, my brother was a head football coach at Avon High School for a while, and it turns out that medical care now has gotten to be very, very popular, and back in the day when I was younger, it wasn't. So right now, high schools have athletic trainers. They're not paid for by the high schools because they don't have the budget for it. They're paid for by local hospitals. So local hospitals hire athletic trainers, assign them to a high school, and that trainer is there to try to make that player go to his hospital for care. Okay, so my brother's the head coach at Avon. He has a kid that gets hurts his knee, and he goes, my brother Don's a pretty good knee specialist at downtown. Nope, can't see him. Trainer says I have to go to Hendricks County Hospital. So it turns out that high schools are just as bad as the pros, and it's getting that way with colleges now because people are finding taking care of athletes is an attractive marketing thing. So it's gotten to be a little bit different than back in the old days when nobody wanted to do it. Anyway, back when I'm taking care of both Purdue and the Colts, I'm trying to get my kids to go to Wabash College, and of course, my wife doesn't want me to have my enthusiasm be shoved on my kids too much. So when my son John came here, John was a really good high school basketball player, football player, played rugby, 6'7". Mac Petty's recruiting John, and I'm imagining John is the next coming of Pete Metzelaars. Mac can tell you about Pete Metzelaars, 6'7", led the country in field goal percentage in national tournament in 1982. Pete played in the NFL for 18 years as a tight end. So Mac's recruiting my son John. So John comes to campus, and everybody goes, "Oh, you're Dr. Shelbourne's son. We'd love to have Dr. Shelbourne's son come to Wabash." He comes home and said, "Dad, there's no way I'm going to go to Wabash." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "I don't want to be Dr. Shelbourne's son in college." He doesn't mind being Dr. Shelbourne's son, but not walking around campus saying, "Look, there's Dr. Shelbourne's son." So John goes to Purdue, walks on the football team as a long snapper, makes the team. He and Drew Brees are teammates, so John goes to 5 bowl games while he's at Purdue. He goes from 6'7", 200 pounds in high school to 6'7", 270 pounds. He pulled a jack on him. My son weighed 200 when he went there. He was 270 his junior year because he was an offensive lineman at Purdue. Graduates, and now he's 43 years old, and he's 200 pounds again, so he's lost it all finally. Well, then, luckily for me, coming down, my son Brian's a really good basketball player at Cathedral High School, and I was really interested in Brian going here, and of course my wife says, "Leave him alone, leave him alone, leave him alone." So Mac Petty's been coming to Brian's basketball games at Cathedral, and Brian's playing okay, but unbeknownst to us, Brian's playing on a team at Cathedral that has 5 kids on the team that are going to play Division I basketball. So Brian's competition in practice is probably as good or better than the competition that he's going to get at Wabash College. So Coach Petty convinces Brian to come to Wabash to play basketball, and with his disappointing high school career, he says, "Dad, I really want to go to Wabash." Fine with me, so Brian goes to Wabash, and of course, I'm anxious for him to make the team, and he calls me his freshman year and goes, "Dad, I think I might make the traveling squad." I'm going, "That's pretty neat." And then he said, "Hey, Dad, I think I might play some this year." I'm going, "That's pretty neat." And all of a sudden he goes, "Hey, Dad, I'm starting this week as a freshman." I'm going, "Wow, that's pretty neat." So, of course, Brian, my brother Dave, is a big basketball player, and Brian doesn't shoot because Brian thinks the guy who's open the most should shoot the most. And my brother says, "Brian, what do you do when you get the ball?" I go, "Well, no, you shoot, Brian, you shoot." He wouldn't do it, so Brian leads the team in assists, steals, charges, loose balls, everything. He gets the Mr. Hustle Award all 4 years. Starts as point guard all 4 years with no statistics. So his senior year, they decide to make a Brian Shelbourne Team Award. So if anybody's on the basketball team here, if anybody wins the Brian Shelbourne Team Award, I have to hire you for the summer. So Brian comes here, Brian graduates from Wabash, comes back to Indianapolis and goes, "Dad, I can't believe it. When people find out where I went to college, they just totally change their attitude toward me. When we say, 'Where'd you go to school?' I went to Wabash. Oh my gosh, I know what that means." I couldn't understand how kids could go to college and not go to class. I couldn't understand how kids could go to college and not be prepared for class, and that's expected at Wabash. You know, when you go to class, you're not late. You've read your assignment before you get there. The professors are your friends. The professors are here to help you. The professors are here to bring out the best in you. And the best thing about Wabash is it teaches you to be articulate, be predictable, be on time, be punctual, know how to write, know how to speak. And that's exactly what Wabash did for Brian. When I hire people, in general, I never hire people because of what they learned in their classroom in college, because if what you're learning in your classroom is so important, I can read the darn book. I'm hiring you because you went to Wabash College. You went to Wabash College, you were on time, you were prepared, you know how to write, you know how to talk, you're predictable, and that's the kind of person I want to have working for me. When I went to medical school, I couldn't understand how did I get into medical school when I had no intention of ever going there? Because I went to Wabash. How did I have all my friends that were rhetoric majors, philosophy majors, religion majors go to medical school? It's because they went to Wabash. Medical school will take Wabash grads compared to any other college because of the work ethic and the predictability. Take advantage of your professors. They are here. I mean, Dr. Zimmerman was my buddy 50 years ago, and he's still here. Coach Johnson, the professors here, I remember all my professors sitting down, talking to them, working with them. They're here to help you. The thing that happens in real life, and when I hire somebody, 8 o'clock is when the day starts. When I went to medical school was actually easier than Wabash because in medical school, my wife worked at the med center. I'd get up, drop her off at work, go to class, go to the library, have lunch, go to class, go to the library, pick up my wife, come home, have dinner, study, go to bed. I mean, that's what I learned at Wabash. That's what I did in medical school. Medical school was actually pretty simple compared to Wabash because I was married and I didn't have to make my meals and didn't have to do my laundry. Interesting, I called President Feller the other day because one of the things that you guys need to take advantage of, 8 o'clock classes are something that I can't understand why anybody would have an 8 o'clock or not have an 8 o'clock start every day. There's no reason to have a class after 8 o'clock because in the real world, work starts at 8 o'clock. If I hire somebody and they said, okay, I'll come to work on 8 o'clock Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but Tuesday and Thursday I'd like to come in at 10. No, that's not the real world. 38% of you guys take an 8 o'clock class. I was disappointed by the low number of 8 o'clock classes. 38% of kids at Wabash take 8 o'clock classes. Everybody should take an 8 o'clock class. Your tuition pays for however many classes you want to take. You can take 12 hours, 15 hours, 18 hours, 21 hours, 24 hours at no increased tuition. Now that I'm out of Wabash, I thought taking all these outside classes were not in my best interest because I was a chemistry major and I had to take economics, religion, philosophy, music. Now that I'm in practice and I miss all the stuff that I didn't know when I was younger, I read nothing but nonfiction books about World War II, about the Korean War, about things that I wished I would have taken more classes when I was here at Wabash. You guys don't have to take 15 hours. You don't have to take 12 hours. You can take as many classes as you want. And I encourage you guys to take classes on things that you don't have an interest in because it's fun. You guys, there's a thing called credit, no credit. You can take a class just because it's fun. And if you do well and you get a C plus or a C or higher, you get credit. If you don't, it's like you never took it. Take the opportunity to learn all you can while you're here. Be on time, be prepared, be articulate. When somebody hires you, that's what Brian found out. When somebody hires you because you went to Wabash, they know what they're getting. They know you're going to be on time. They know you're going to be prepared. They know you're going to be punctual. They know you're going to be articulate. And so all the things that they talk about for Wabash College to have, you guys are going to have that when you graduate, and you're going to have a head and shoulders advantage to everybody else from other schools because you went to Wabash College. Actually, when Brian was taking comps, I thought that comps were a great way to end because it proves that you know what you were doing. If all you did when you were here was study the night before a test and pass the test and forgot what you're doing, then comps are going to show you up. If you knew what you were doing, you read your thing ahead of time, you prepared, you talked to your professor, comps are a way to show off and show that you know what you're doing. So all the things that I'm sure President Felder talks all the time, if you get out of Wabash College and you're going to look for a job somewhere, they're going to hire you because you're a reliable person that knows how to think critically, act responsibly, lead effectively, and live humanely. Thank you.